Okay. All righty, Rich, shall we tell everybody a little bit about you?
Hello, everybody. I've been on a number of these meetings before, and I am an adult adopted person from Colorado. Paquita asked why I'm wearing sunglasses. I just got out of the car because I'm here at the Male Adoptee Summit in Winter Park, Colorado. We're just kicking off tonight, and it's about a 65-mile drive outside of Denver, but we just came over to the Continental Divide, and my regular glasses are somewhere in my car. So as it gets darker, I'll probably lift these up, but it's great to see you. I have been involved with the adoption reform movement since, gosh, the mid-90s, and serve as president of Adoption Search Resource Connection here in Denver. And we also recently formed a 501c4 lobbying organization called the Coalition for Truth and Transparency in Adoption. And I think they've got those links to put up there, but exciting things are happening there. We've got tons of news to report nationally, but the big thing that just happened in Colorado, I don't know if you track what's happening in the donor conceived world, but Colorado just passed the first bill. It's a prospective bill, so it kicks in 2025, but it's the first bill that would guarantee donor conceived individuals access to the names of their donors. And it's a huge deal. First thing in the country, this country like this, and there are other provisions in that bill that would limit the number of donor families to like 25 worldwide. It requires materials and information being given out before someone makes the decision to be a donor, and some other provisions that really move the conversation forward in the US. And the other amazing thing, one of the key sponsors was the Senate president here. And when you got the Senate president behind you, you can bend some rules. So he got the bill introduced late, and the thing moved through both houses almost unanimously in 3 weeks. So this is essentially a miracle. The group behind it that's been pushing it is the Donor Conceived Counsel. And if you haven't heard of them, go to their website. These are people who were created through assisted reproduction and have now come of age and are speaking their truth. And the overlap with adoptee issues is so similar. I think many of you know that, in terms of knowing our origins, the importance of truth and transparency, the importance of monitoring a system that isn't always ethical, shall we say. And I don't know how many of you guys have seen the new Netflix documentary. Have you guys seen that? About the doctor in Indiana? I think it's called Our Father.
I haven't seen it yet. Anybody here? Peter has?
Yeah, I think
I've seen it.
I just watched it yesterday. Oh my God.
What was your reaction to it?
It was just heartbreaking, like just so heartbreaking. The poor girl, she wanted a sibling and she ended up with what, 80 something? Yeah,
94.
94, yeah. It was just devastating.
It's funny.
I don't know. I find donor conception completely unethical on every level. And so there's no cases where, to me, that it can be done ethically, because ultimately it leads to where adoptees are. You don't want to be adopted. You'd rather have been raised by your families in general. And the donor conceived are fighting for not having anonymity, and they're fighting for things. But when it comes down to it and you listen to what they say, they don't want to exist. And they're not fighting for that yet. So it's really hard to watch.
And this, of course, was not the first story like that. I mean, 20 years ago, there was a doctor in San Diego where the same story came out, where he'd been inseminating women without their knowledge or consent. And I think he ended up fleeing to Mexico because they were coming after him. A Colorado doctor from Grand Junction did the same thing. I think there were about 200 or 250 there. No, I think it was 75. It was not quite as many. but a jury just awarded the families involved something just short of $8 or $9 million. So people are reacting to it, but this really, I'm writing an op-ed piece that's going to come out in the Colorado Sun in the next week or two. But the illustration I'm using is that this is still the Wild West in many ways. The hearing in the Senate State Military and Veterans Affairs Committee was really interesting because on the pro side, we had about 16 people testifying in support. And the donor conceived brokers, the lawyers and the sperm donors and the egg donor clinics came out in force against it. They were trying to kill the bill. The bill got voted unanimously out of the committee, but their big argument was this is going to cut our business by 40%, therefore you can't do it. And they sort of paid lip service to the idea that, oh yes, we do see there's some reforms that are needed, but we have the ASRM regulations, the Association for I'm messing it up, but it's basically the Association for Assisted Reproductive Medicine. They said, we already have these regulations. And the bill sponsor, Senator Fenberg, replied to that. And he said, you know, the first version of this bill would have codified those regulations. I took the words from the association's regulations and put them into a bill, and you guys blew up and told me nobody does this, nobody can do this and stay in business. And so it really is still incredibly unregulated, very Wild West. Gametes are flying all over the world for ridiculous amounts of money. And, you know, one of the people involved who was spearheading the effort said that his parents were told that he was from this wonderful genetic background and a college student who was brilliant, when in fact he was the product of a sperm donation from a drug addict who died at 36. And so these are just the infant baby step stages of reform in this arena, but it's huge and passed the Senate unanimously. A little bit more of a battle in the House. There's a group of House Republicans that are don't regulate anything. They're so libertarian that they don't understand. They don't really care what happens. That there's some constitutional principle that if you try to tell people you can't inseminate more than 25 families, that's somehow violating their constitutional rights. But they were voted down and talked down and kind of beaten down by the end. So the vote in the House was 53-12. And there were a lot of amendments along the way. There was a lot of negotiation along the way, but the Donor Conceived Council did a fantastic job leading this. And the fact that we had already been active in the legislature here in Colorado, still had strong connections. One of our co-sponsors happened to be a committee member on the first committee. And so we got to kind of chum it up with him, and he's a farmer. And farmers get this, you know, the horses and bulls and dogs are all genetically tracked much more carefully than human gametes are, as they're shipped all over the world. So it's a huge issue, and we're pretty sure the governor's going to sign it. And it's on the one hand a tiny step because it's just going to apply to those transactions that happen from 2025 going forward, but it's precedent setting and we're thrilled to be part of it. So
great, great, Rich.
Yeah.
May I interrupt you for just a second, Rich? We do have a
please
question.
do.
Michael, did you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, it's just sort of adding to the conversation. When I was first reunited with biological family members, I then found out I had 4 half sisters. And then one of my sister's husband is actually donor conceived. So I've brought a lot of this stuff to her and to them to actually look at. And what was really interesting is that in the family on their mother's side, there's a collection of genetic illnesses that have been passed down through the family as well. So they've met with this same dialogue, but it's actually come through the mother's line. You know, the idea of medical history. But I mean, he's the husband of one of I think 3 siblings, and they're all donor conceived through different men. I don't know whether it was done through a family friend. I mean, I don't know the background. I don't know whether it's a family friend or whatever the case may be, but he doesn't want to find out technically who his father is. So he's put a brick wall up. But it's going to be very interesting. She's following this, and she watched the doco the other day because I shared it on Facebook, and she watched it because she was home unwell. And she's recognizing that. So I think it definitely aligns with a lot of the stuff that we talk about. The sense of a lack of accountability longitudinally is a real issue. When I was at uni, the discussion of sperm donorship came up, and the way they sort of said to us is, "Oh, well, you can donate, but don't worry, they probably won't use your sperm anyway. You can just go and spend the money and go out drinking for the night." So there's no long-term accountability or thinking of what the reality is going to actually happen with that sperm. So that always really sat with me. I sort of really sat and thought of that. It's like, wow, there's just this no thinking involved at the coalface, where someone is presented with a very, very, very simple idea, where the ramifications for it are lifetime and long term. So it's very, very similar in the case with each of these doctors that are not thinking long termly. But I think there's a high level of narcissism with these guys. The idea of populating so many offspring. If we were to take it and say, okay, if you put it in a different sphere, if I was to go out and impregnate, say, 100 women and have no relationship with the offspring, and also, but they have no access to medical records, and there'd be also no child support within that, I'd be considered a deadbeat dad. So I sort of take that framework as well.
Thank you, Michael.
No worries.
Anybody else have a comment or a question? You still there, Rich?
I just wanted to say I was on a program over here called SBS Insight, a TV program, and there was a woman on that program with me who had something like, she estimated 400 siblings to her godfather, who was her mother's gynecologist. Yeah, it's huge.
Insanity.
Yeah, I turn off my camera when I'm listening because I put the phone up to my ear. So, and one of the things that came out in the hearings, everyone was kind of dancing around it. Nobody was really talking about the money piece directly. And so by the time Shane Madsen, our lobbyist, and I got up to testify, we were kind of on the second rebuttal panel. And in my head, I was just saying, nobody has named the elephant in the room, so I guess it's my job to do that. And I just said, the thing we all aren't talking about is that this is an economic system. And all the warm, fuzzy conversation about, family building and all the joy that comes and that sort of thing. This is an economic system. And these people who are here opposing the bill, they say they recognize that they need reforms. And they're saying that they're concerned about, protections for the donor conceived. But if you look at it as an economic system, it is the products themselves that are having to speak up and bring this bill. And I purposely use the word product to drive the point home. And, legislators are pretty sharp people for the most part. And so they already knew that, but you could just hear a little quiet boom in the room when somebody finally named the elephant. And one of the panelists, the vice chair, did a marvelous job just questioning the opponents about why this wasn't a good idea. And she kept saying, I'm not hearing any specifics. How is this not good for everybody involved, except for you losing 40% of your business? And it was a powerful time, and moving that out of the committee was a huge step. Many powerful stories. Researchers from all over the world testified. We had people on Zoom, a professor from Alabama, a gentleman from Australia, someone else from Yale testified. So it's a big, big deal. And kind of our general topic tonight is thinking outside the OBC, thinking outside the original birth certificate. Because if we're talking about being advocates, there's so much more that we can do. Yes, records are important. Yes, birth certificates are important. But here in Colorado, we took an incremental path. It took us about 15 years to get it done. But once we got the records fully opened, we moved on to other things, such as, and feel free to chime in, raise your hand, but we got a law passed that allows birth parents to have access to records they signed. You would think that that would be an assumed thing, but in many states, they never got copies of what they signed, and the law doesn't let them get it. So that's something that people could work on. We've gone on to work on foster youth issues, where we're helping. We got a little coalition of like the truckers and some other organizations to help provide educational funds to get them trained as they age out of foster care, so that, you know, something like half of foster youth by the time they're 24 are homeless after they've aged out at age 18. And this is a big issue. So we've done a lot of work along those lines. And now we're expanding into the donor conceived piece. So there's a lot of work to do and a lot of talking points that are already written and ready. And so if you're in a place where you feel like you could use some encouragement or help, or if you have tips for us, I know we've got international speakers here in Australia. In many ways, it's far ahead of what's happening in the States. I love the spirit of collaboration. So thoughts, comments, questions, emotional outbursts.
Anybody have any questions right now or comments? Don't see any hands up right now. Rich, for those that are here with us this evening, what do they need to do to join you or support you in any way? What can we do to help?
So there are two things. Our biggest initiatives right now through the Coalition for Truth and Transparency in Adoption. We're targeting fundraising efforts in states that we're pretty sure need a lobbyist. It's great when grassroots groups can get together and make an impact on a state legislature. In some places, such as Florida, such as Wisconsin, people have been working on it for years, and you need an insider who knows the people with boots on the ground to do that, and that takes money. One thing that impressed me incredibly about the donor conceived group, and this is kind of, I want us to talk about this here, just have a little family roundtable on this, because the donor conceived people seem a lot more ready to open their wallets to pay for lobbyists. They had hired probably the premier Democrat-focused lobbying group in Colorado, very high-powered group. And then our connections through our other bills were able to round up the Republicans and the Libertarians as well, because Lori Sain, who's running for Congress now, was one of our bill sponsors when she was a representative for Weld County. And money's a big deal. The Coalition for Truth and Transparency website, we've got 3 initiatives going, one for Florida, one for Wisconsin, which we almost had a deal with the state, but then the session ended early. So I think a good bill is going to come back next year. We're working with a lobby group, the Hamilton group. They're fantastic. They're well respected. When the agencies and the departments saw that the Hamilton group was involved, it was the first time they came to negotiate at the table, rather than just killing the bill. And Bill Barrett is working basically pro bono in Florida, but he's been around a long time. He knows the Republicans. We want to pay him. He's not asking us to, but we want to pay him. And the third key initiative is what we're calling the Breakfast Club. And the NCSL, the National Conference of State Legislatures, is coming to Denver this summer. And it's where legislators from all over the country come. They tour booths. The coalition, Adoptee Rights Coalition, has had a booth there for years. We meet and make contact with legislators. We explain the case and we recruit people who want to sponsor bills. What we're wanting to do is put on a breakfast for legislators, similar to what happened in Chicago a few years ago. Because when you feed them, you get a captive audience, you can educate them. And that's probably going to run in the neighborhood of $5,000, because if you're going to feed 25 to 50 legislators and rent room space, it's not cheap. And I'm going to talk to the donor conceive people and go, what is your strategy for fundraising? Because adoptees have historically just said, we shouldn't have to pay for this. And you're right, we shouldn't. But guess what? Politics is a nasty game. And if you don't have a strong voice in that game in a particular state, you really run the risk of some things going awry or just not moving anywhere. So that's what's on my mind about how the heck did this little group throw themselves together and raise enough money to hire this incredible lobby group in Colorado on such short notice. So that's one of my passion points here. So let's talk about that. Why do we have such a hard time opening our wallets for this? What do you think people's fears are?
Anybody? Lori?
I think some of the fears, and you're meaning like the adoptees or donor conceive opening their wallets to pay for the lobbyist and stuff, right?
Correct.
I think we're so disjointed that we don't know where to put the money sometimes. So we don't want to put 25 here, whether it's $25 or $2,500, in 10 different spots and think that nothing's going to happen. No one's going to listen. I'm listening to how you're joining people together and how you're not just focusing on your state and stuff. So I think more of a unified voice. And I know adoptees, we're just finding our voices, so that's my own personal opinion.
Thank you. What else?
Anybody else?
I'm just wondering if it's, from an organization about, just putting people donating, but not having a specific object at that time. Like, this is what we want to do now, and we need money to do it now. Maybe our focus will drag open the purse strings. That's what I'm sort of thinking.
And for me personally, this is Sandy, and I'm an adoptee. I'm spending an awful lot of money on therapy and travel and people to open records for me. And it's not that I don't care about the other issues, because I certainly do, but financially, I'm already, as an adoptee, spending a ton of money to deal with what I have to deal with personally. There isn't something else for me to give. And I don't think I'm the only person in that position.
Yeah, it's totally fair. Times are tight and they're getting tighter. There's no question. And one of my goals is to help us leverage our numbers. If 250 people can give $50 or $100, that adds up. There are some big donors out there who have contributed in various states along the way. But I think our real power, and I really appreciate the point about targeting specific projects as well, rather than just saying, hey, vaguely send us money and we'll use it for good things. This is why with the CTTA, we're trying to specify where we're targeting the funds and give a fundraising goal, because, there's, thankfully, the gift of being adopted sometimes is you get a great education, you get great jobs, you have good income. Sometimes the challenge of being adopted is you're so busy, as Sandy mentioned, just struggling through the mud of whatever's happening in your brain that you're pretty maxed out. And I've been in both places, so I totally get it. I've been on the verge of having no money, and I've been in places where I'm more comfortable. And it's interesting how it goes back and forth. But I think another thing that I've seen is finding people who you trust to administer those funds, because our movement does not have a great track record of having ethical people at the helm. And we've had a couple of scandals along the way, not our group, but other organizations. And this is where we put together an advisory board that has a CPA. We've got a lawyer involved. We've got national figures who understand how to run nonprofit organizations. And we've got checks and balances in place to be sure that the funds are being handled properly. And that's a legitimate concern. Because some of the dollars that have disappeared in some other organizations have been huge and terrifying. So we're trying to shift that model to target specific things. Our goal for 2022 is, this is a little arbitrary, but not completely. Our goal is, let's raise $20,022 in 22. And the way that breaks down is about $5,000 for the breakfast in Denver with legislators, about $10,000 to cover our bills for the Hamilton group this year, about another $5,000 that we can help Bill with. We've paid him $1,000 right now just because we haven't raised enough, and then another $5,000 to kind of start a war chest, because there are other states that need this coming up. And our books are open to people if you send a request and what's happening. Everyone involved is all volunteer. No one is taking a salary. No one will take a salary because we're dedicated to the cause. So more thoughts on money, the power of a little bit times many people.
Okay, Rich, we've got some questions lined up for you, okay?
Go for
We'll
it.
start with Shelley and then Michael.
I think I agree with Sandy and just saying, I think it's a lack of knowledge. You hear that they want donations. You really don't have numbers on how much it's going to cost. How much should you donate? And then there is always that, well, I'm going to give this money. I'm trying to pay for my kids' college, everything else. And then it's not going to help. So that's really a struggle. And then you think, well, could I just petition a court myself and get, the information myself, which I actually did in Wisconsin, and got my local judge to give me my birth certificate, and paid the $20 for it. So as much as I want everyone to have free access, I think if you're not wealthy, you have to just weigh out that, is it worth it? Is it not? If I felt like it was going to happen, I would, I don't know if any amount of money would, be too much if I knew it was going to happen. But I don't know, maybe we're just so used to not getting what we want that you worry about giving this money and then $20,000, $30,000 ends up not going anywhere. I guess that's just my thought.
Valid point.
Thank you, Shelley. Michael, and then Megan.
I think another thing to think about, which is often missed, is the idea of allies. So actually having numbers that are in support of what you may be doing. Yes, we can certainly have a focus on getting money towards a cause to get something moved or pushed through, whatever the cause may be. That we need to tap into the numbers of people that do actually support us. So technically, they don't have to be an adoptee to support an adoptee cause. I think that's a real big thing that's often missed.
That's a great point, Michael. We all have friends who care about us. We have family members who care about us. We have coworkers who hear. I talk to my coworkers and their jaws just drop constantly that said, I had no idea that this is what was going on in the world in 2022.
Okay, Megan,
Hi.
and then Kathleen.
Hi, yeah. So I'm a transracial transnational adoptee. And so I think, again, I'm just echoing and adding to the disjointed conversation that I can tell you that for say, like in the Asian adoptee world, our focus is on, say, the Adopted Citizenship Act in Congress. It's on a lot of us still need post-adoption services, languages, help, birth searches in origin, countries of origin, the attacks that are happening to those of us who are Asian American. There's just a lot of other things that are affecting us. And I also want to echo, since I'm a leader with a new group called Adoptee Voices Rising, and we've had a discussion similar to this about how do domestic adoptees and international adoptees work together? Where is the overlap, and where are there different causes that we're going to be focusing on this area and you all be focusing on another area, right? And so I think, you know, money is tight everywhere. It is hard to, and I think it is very hard for the adoption community as a whole to figure out, well, where will I get the most bang for my buck, right? Who should I invest in? And so I think that, again, there needs to be broader conversations about how can we work together to make sure that we're all supporting each other. And yeah, I also echo that it shouldn't all come from the adoptee community. My community is very tapped out from providing a lot of services and programs and whatnot. We need to be getting funding from state, from federal, etc. And so happy, Rich, to jump on a call and talk about some of this. This is what a lot of us are talking about in the transnational adoptee world.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'll follow up a little bit more on that later, but that's an excellent point, because, and frankly, in many ways, the transnational adoptees are more organized, less fractured. I won't say totally not, you know, everybody has camps and viewpoints on things, but I think that we've got big tents, and the international questions and concerns, both around trafficking and the Adoptee Citizenship Act, are worthy causes that I'm donating to as a domestic adoptee, because I believe in them. And my thought is, nobody can give to everything. So I don't think anybody should feel guilty about not giving every time somebody raises your hand and say, hey, we need money. But what are you passionate about? You know, what fires you up, and what's something you might put 25 bucks into? It doesn't have to be a lot once a year. If you can do more, what's something you might put 100 or 500 or $1,000 into once a year? But I love the idea of coordinating. I love the idea of having a few trusted, centralized places that can strategically target those funds. And if you've got a great grassroots movement in Colorado, Shane was a lobbyist for 20 years. She helped us. She's an adoptee. She did the work pro bono for us. She wouldn't let us pay her. Another adopted mom, Betsy Murray, we paid her a fraction of her fee because she was an adopted mom and she cared. But she also felt like her work was worth some time, and it was worth more than that when you've got an adoptive mom and an adoptee lobbying for you. That's when you get leverage against Catholic Charities and all the adoption agencies together, and the state people who don't want to muddy the waters. So it's often a hybrid situation. Here's a quiz. Who can name all the states where that have changed their records laws that have had lobbyists involved? Do you know? We kind of live in this fantasy land that, oh, these great things are just happening, like the grassroots people rise up and they just mysteriously happen. Occasionally that happens, but some significant money has been needed to be spent in a lot of states. Any guesses?
Anybody?
All of them.
Almost.
There's a guess.
Almost all of them.
Almost. So we've already said Colorado. right? Ohio, lobbyist was involved. Illinois, you had a high-ranking member in the legislature involved, and there were people behind the scenes helping. Missouri, lobbyists involved. Alabama, good old boy, well-known legislator who had this is interesting because I always thought there was this big battle for Alabama, but it's not true. The bill sponsor was a good old boy. He had a sister-in-law who wanted to get her records, and she came to him. He introduced the bill. He borrowed some language from some other states, and it just flew through in the year 2000, which is unheard of. So the right sponsor and or lobbyists make a difference. New York, there was a lobbyist involved. Oregon, a ballot initiative that Helen Hill, God bless her. I mean, what an example. She put up, at least $90,000 of her own money to fund the ballot initiative in Oregon. It was an inheritance she had from her father, and she talked to her dad about it. He said, it's your money, whatever you want to do. I have not come close to investing that much money in what we're doing. If you add up the billable hours, still wouldn't get there. But Texas, lobbyists are involved, volunteer basis as well. Tennessee, Caprice East and Denny Glad, who were together, Caprice East moved to Nashville, and she was the full-time lobbyist. She gave up her job to do this full-time for several years. And at the end of that, the House gave her a standing ovation while she was in the gallery when they passed the bill. And so I don't want to have anybody feeling guilty for not doing some phenomenal thing, okay? But my motto is do what you can when you can. If there's a small sacrifice you can make about something you're passionate to do, please do it. If there's a bigger sacrifice you can make in terms of time or money or talent, please do it. That's how we get unified and get motivated, get inspired by this. When legislators in Colorado heard that I was burning my own vacation time to be there, my credibility went up. I had one gentleman, a senator, his name was Senator Mutzaban. He was this old curmudgeon guy who's, so how much money do you make off of doing this? I said, not a dime, sir. I'm burning my vacation time to come to these hearings. You know, I could have been laying on the beach somewhere. And there are many people in many states who do the same thing. I'm far from special in that way. But if we get a spirit of sacrifice, large or small, if we get a spirit of kind of whatever it takes to make this happen, I really think that we've hit a turning point and the momentum is there. And there are people with different philosophies, which is great. There's room for different philosophies. More thoughts, more comments. I see a hand.
Yes, Kathleen's next, Rich. You there, Kathleen?
Go ahead, Kathleen. Do we have someone else that we can go to while we're waiting on Kathleen?
Oh, this is Kathleen. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Hi,
we
Kathleen.
can.
I apologize. Yeah, I'm just kind of piggybacking what everybody else said, but I have a couple smaller ideas. First of all, it's centralization. We have so many groups going so many different directions, and there is extreme power in joining together and creating our own message that would at least cover most, if not all, of the groups. So it's kind of like a master group with subgroups being the current groups that are out there. Because I even start having a hard time on keeping track of everybody. I agree with the lobbyist idea. My daughter graduated from NYU in political campaign management, and she's worked in New York City for Eliot Spitzer, Congressman Norm Dix. But in DC. She worked in the White House. And it's not as hard as you think. Yes, it does take money. Yes, it does take a lobbyist. There's certainly a lot of campaign managers with heavy duty Rolodex, well, old fashioned Rolodex on your computer now, with contacts and who they know, different senators, et cetera. And every time they're doing a campaign and then they're out of a campaign, they have a lot of free time between campaigns to help work. So that's kind of a source to help. But I find that because we're so disjointed, we're not effective in messaging and branding a movement. And I myself am a baby scoop era mother. And in fact, the Jesuit priest who took my son was from Denver, Colorado. But I would hope that we could start joining together and instead of being disjointed and seeing that basically we're all searching for the same thing. Transparency, knowing who we are, what happened, where things are going, having a right to documentation. And that's my 2 cents. I contributed my own $60,000. I sued the Catholic Church, and I haven't been quite effective in overcoming statute of limitations, but a federal judge has declared that my case was a crime. So we've gone from years ago where it was, you know, oh, this was all on you, and now it's been identified as a crime. I've contacted newspapers. It's just picking up the phone and calling AP, and Washington Post did a story on my case just because I had the courage to dial their number. So it's not that hard in one respect, but it is hard work. It is taking your time, keeping track of who you contacted, what you did, where you want to go. And those are my little comments out there, and I'll shut up now. Thank you.
You sound like you are a force to be reckoned with. Thank you.
I run nonprofit corporations, by the way, also. I work with hiring auditors to audit books. So if you need extra volunteerism, I could help.
Wonderful. Maybe we can connect through Marcie and Jen, because I have a couple of ideas for you.
Thank you. I
Thank
don't want
you.
to take everyone's time. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else have anything to add? Any other questions? Okay, Rich.
Good. So in the midst of all this, one of the things I've learned along the way is, you know, you've heard the saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And Kathleen is absolutely right. You need clear talking points. You need to evaluate each state by state situation. Some states are Republican controlled heavily. Some are Democrat controlled heavily. Some are what they call purple states, kind of like Colorado. Even though the Dems are in control of everything here, there are the leading number of registered voters are independents here in Colorado. So we call ourselves a purple state. There's even a Colorado public radio program called Purplish that talks about what's happening in the political arena. And so another piece of this is targeting your message and knowing your audience. One of the great bipartisan, it seems like it should be obvious, but bipartisan efforts are always important. If you get a bill sponsor from both parties in both houses, that goes a lot better. And we were scrambling to round up a sponsor in the House on this donor conceived bill until the very last minute. And then Representative Soper stepped up, and everybody, we all just said, of course, Representative Soper, why didn't we talk to him first? because I'd met him at a hearing, and he's a great guy who gets it. He's well educated and has a balanced perspective on a lot of things. So that's where the big tent idea comes in, that there's more than one way to get to the top of the mountain. You don't have to do it all at once. It's great if you do. It's certainly the preferred way to do it. But there are a number of states that people used to say, this is kind of funny, people used to say, well, not one single state has made incremental changes, then gone back to fix it. And I said, well, Colorado did that. Hawaii did that. Montana's in the process of doing that. We just saw Connecticut last year, which had taken incremental steps and went all the way. Vermont this year is another state that had one law in '86 and as appears to have gone the rest of the way. There's some kind of ambiguous language in Vermont that we're kind of waiting to see how the state actually interprets that. But hopefully it did do what the proponents said it did. Massachusetts is in that process. They've got a great bill that would take it from a sandwich state to the next. My philosophy is the best way to get a no compromise outcome is to do a no compromise solution, which is either a court case or a ballot initiative. There are a couple of exceptions to that, and kudos to everybody who's done it that way. But not everybody has $250,000 or $2 million to run a ballot initiative in their state, right? So I think the real key here is getting motivated, find a project to connect with, say, okay, I'm going to support this one. There's a lot of people out there, they can support other ones, but I'm going to support this one. And so it's not that you have to do everything or don't get overwhelmed with all the choices. Go, wait, I know these people, I trust these people, I believe in this project. I believe what they're saying, and I can put some time and energy into that. Does that make sense? It doesn't sound hard to me if there's enough of us doing it, you know? Kathleen, is your hand back up? Or did
No,
it never?
sorry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time because I'm using my phone.
Oh, I get that. I get that.
I will say I support what you're saying. What is it? The Chinese saying, the path to a 1,000 steps is just taking the first step. It's baby steps. You don't have to do everything all at once, but you got to take that first step somewhere.
Yeah, I get a lot of emails and messages from people saying, hey, what's happening in Kentucky? What's happening in Virginia? What's happening in Florida? And invariably, I try to respectfully and humbly respond and say, well, let's start with, have you contacted your legislator yet to talk about this? Have you become friends? Have you been to one of their town hall meetings so you're a face and not an email? Have you told your story to somebody who might have some influence or somebody who might know somebody who has some influence? And if you think of it as just like little droplets creating ripples, then those ripples spread. One of our challenges, I have dealt with this, I still deal with it even after years of going down to the legislature. We feel unworthy sometimes. We feel like our voices don't matter. It's scary to sit in front of a panel who's staring at you and said, okay, you have 2 minutes to tell us why this matters. That's not fun. It's not easy. And it's not for everybody. You know, if you're more of an introvert or a writer or a creative or someone like that, and you want to make a documentary or write a song or write a book or write a poem, please do that. Everything we can do to kind of create a cultural tidal wave around these issues, we need to do. If you're someone who, hey, Lee, we've got some guys sitting here hanging out for the Male Adoptee Summit, and another one just joined us. So, but the key is everybody do a little bit. Everybody do what you can do. And then the doors start to open, and then you start to meet people who have a connection. And then all of a sudden you've got a thing going. You go, I didn't do this. I don't know how this happened. But all of a sudden we've got influential people who know us and are listening to us and care about what we say. So then instead of being scary or overwhelming, it gets exciting.
MJ, did you have a question? You've got your hand up.
Yeah, hi. I spend a lot of time on TikTok, on adoptee TikTok, and I resonate with many of the people who have posted in the chat about sort of meeting awful people and like having to dredge out our own personal trauma as a justification for something everybody else has. And I wonder if, I agree with the idea that we are more effective together than we would be separate, both including I'm an adoptee, but I believe that there are birth or first parents who, feel like a crime was committed against them, or they have their own trauma and they want to be part of this also. So I wonder if there's a common document or a place where we can look to see what are the frequently heard pushback arguments against why open records are not a universal human right, and what is the response and or data that connects to that question or that pushback. And then because I know that I would be happy to talk to, I live in Sacramento, so I see people that make rules, and lots of people work for the government here. So, but I want to be able to show research, or I want to be able to show another state that has a model. I saw on the website that you posted, Rich, that there is a model policy document. I think that it's not just about us. We need to get people who don't have anything to do with adoption to see why this isn't okay. And I really strongly believe in evidence-based. People don't believe us when we tell them our lived experience. So we need to do something more than just talk about what happens to us. And I feel like the thing that is usually convincing, maybe not so much these days, but is facts and evidence and research. So is there an movement to build a repository or documents that we could lean on? I'm not volunteering also, but I want to know if there's one out there. So thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as key talking points, the two websites that I would point people to right now are the Coalition for Truth and Transparency in Adoption, and that's adoptiontruthandtransparency.org. And also the Adoptee Rights Coalition. We've got a page that's entitled For Legislators. And there's also a resources page where we break down talking points. And we have a repository of talking point sheets depending on who you're talking to. We've got a talking point sheet for hardcore right-wing Christian Republicans. We've got a talking point sheet for left-wing. Interestingly, the far right and the far left sometimes both struggle with this because, well, I don't want to waste too much time getting into it, but this is an issue with strange bedfellows because there are people oppose our bills for different reasons that don't even make sense. You've got the one group that's saying this is going to cause more abortions. You've got another group saying, wait a minute, this is a mother's rights issue. And whereas normally you would think they would support birth parent transparency, they sort of turn against birth parents. And you've got to be able to counter all of those. One thing that we did after watching people talk about, just kind of pound the table that this is a civil right for 20 years, that played well in New York. It does not play well in Republican states, simply because as soon as you say it's my right to have this document, some well-intentioned legislator is going to stand up and say, well, what about birth parent rights? And then you've created an adversarial situation that doesn't exist really, where somebody has to stand up and protect the birth parents. And that's what tends to drive these compromise bills that we're all trying to avoid. Does that make sense? So what we've moved to is that this is an issue about truth and transparency in adoption rather than shame and secrecy. And that's good policy for everybody. It's good for adoptees because adoptees know where they came from. It's good for birth parents because they don't get in a situation where they deal with some shady agency person or social worker who's trying to coerce their child out of them, but it creates accountability so that there can be true informed consent. I'm a fan of whenever possible, we need to help mothers keep their children. But I think history tells us there always has been, there always will be some who simply cannot, don't want to, or should not raise their children. There's always going to be that population. And adoption is an issue. I'm not an anti-adoption person. So narrowing it down to something simple like that, when you say, okay, so what sounds better to you? Truth and transparency or shame and secrecy? Madam Legislator. That's not a hard answer, not a hard question to answer, right? But when you start going down the line, and once the bill passes, we can call it whatever we want. You know, adoptees finally got their rights. That's great. But I'm just talking about the efficacy of talking points here and knowing who your audience is. Republicans love truth and transparency. Democrats love truth and transparency. Does that make sense? And then you can drill down. A lot of the talking points we have are to deal with objections. Ultimately, this is an emotional issue. And the other thing that I tell people is it's not so much a legal argument as it's a sales pitch, right? Because in the courts, we've already lost. We've already lost the absolute right arguments. On the Adoptee Rights Coalition page, I've summarized all the cases up to one that just happened a couple of years ago, where they've argued that this is an absolute right for adoptees. Every court has struck that down. Now, the good news is the courts have also struck down that birth parent anonymity they've also said it's not an absolute right. They've really boiled it back to legitimate interests. And the Oregon Court of Appeals said that the fact that people have legitimate interest doesn't necessarily equate with being an absolute right. The hard truth is, and I had an attorney from Colorado who supported our cause come and tell me this years ago, and it set me back on my heels. I did not like it, but I finally got what she was saying. She said, here's the deal. Your birth certificate, are we coming to the end here? Sorry. Your birth certificate is actually a creation of the state for purposes of the state. And technically the state can do whatever it wants with it. It just has to give everybody equal treatment on that. And equal treatment, the courts have ruled, does not mean identical treatment. This is the hard part, because you're going, wait a minute, all those people get their birth certificate that has their birth name on it. It has their original parents on it. But courts have ruled that equal does not necessarily mean identical. And what this state attorney told me was the fact that you get a birth certificate that allows you to function in society, that names your legal parents and gives your birth date, whether true, false, or approximate, means you're being treated equally. Not what everybody wanted to hear, right? But what's interesting is when you get some of these states who've done incremental steps, like Connecticut that just took that step, like Colorado that took a step, like Massachusetts that took a step, those are states where people are in fact being treated unequally, and it gives an incentive to go on and get the rest of the pie. So that's one strategy. It's not the only strategy. But my approach has been, let's get what we can when we can without making compromises that are unfixable down the road. You have to be careful about the language you put in. But we've got the history, we've got the track record that says if you need to do a prospective bill, start there. If you need to get the pre-86 cases because those people are older and maybe dying first, start there. And once you get your foot in the door, you build some credibility, you build some relationships with people. You got state reps who were there for 8 years and then they moved to the Senate. You got potentially 16 years worth of supporters in a state legislature. And all of a sudden, the people who were scratching their heads saying, I don't understand this issue, all of a sudden they're in the leadership now. And you can say, hey, remember me? We got this bill. Can you support that? And then when you get leadership, you get good grassroots activists, and you get a strong lobbyist or two working on it, that's what moves these bills. The fact that we could call Lori Sain and she could call House Republican leaders and get through to them and say, hey, this is a good bill. Can you support that? Do you know how many votes that got us on the donor conceived bill? People I couldn't have called. They don't know who I am, but they know who Lori Sain is. And she helped us. She picked up the phone.
Right,
More
good
thoughts, more
information.
questions. I'm preaching a lot here. Sorry. Feel free to interrupt me anytime.
Okay, I'll interrupt you, Rich. We've got some more questions. Yvonne and then Marcie.
Okay, I think I'm online. Good evening, everyone. My name is Yvonne Rivers. I'm the host of Birth Moms Real Talk podcast. And everything you said, I came in late, so I know I missed a lot of things, whatever. Advocacy is really marketing. You know, I run a marketing agency the past 25 years, because when you have an advocacy or movement, you've got to get it out there and market it. I mentioned 2 years ago, Black Lives Matter, you know, institutional racism. It wasn't really put out for any people to really even think about it until they were told the truth. Now, I think probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, you may have heard me say, I live in Virginia. Well, I live in DC, Washington, DC, but my son was born in Virginia. So I had sent in requests for his original birth certificate. I never got it. I don't know what time he was born, how many pounds, or anything of that. So when I submitted it, they had the form, which they made a change, because I tried this before, that it even asked the question, is this person adopted? I answered yes, and I put myself in as birth mother. What I got in the mail last week, because a document came, and they sent me a text and said, your document is being processed. I said, hallelujah. I just knew I was going to get my son's original birth certificate. They sent me his amended birth certificate. And I'm like, what is this? Because essentially, with the information I had to submit for is my name, my date of birth, and I had to send my birth certificate to verify who I was, put my parents' name. And so by them sending me his amended, they knew who I was. But they did not send me the original one. They sent me the amended one. Now, I'm not leaving it there, because I'm going to contact them and really submit again for us to get that. But again, you know, all the things we're talking about, I think that needs to be done. But the voice that needs to come back is your own story, looking at the laws state by state, as you say, and really create a movement. And that's what I'm calling it. It's a movement, because I'm not only discriminated, I've got a right to this record of my son. I don't have anything to show I gave birth to him. Never got the birth certificate. He'll be 49 this year. So what they sent me was the amended one with the adoptive parents. But see, what got me when I saw that, and even what was so really screwed up, and I'll say it that way, is the fact that they had the date that certificate was filed, birth certificate was filed for, was he was born October 11th. It showed that the state of Virginia got the record for his birth on October 18th. That was the day they said his birth was filed. He wasn't placed with them until the 23rd of October. So I'm like, how you get this? So it's like all this stuff in the back. So they haven't heard the last from me, because for verification of them sending me, because prior to this time, what I was told before when I requested, I didn't have a right to get it because I was no longer related to him. So when I submitted my birth certificate, then they sent me his amended birth certificate with his adoptive parents on it. So they know they've got the record of me giving birth to them. So we have to call it out. We need to call it out. Advocacy is marketing. So essentially for us, if you've got people in your legislature or whatever state you're truly trying to work with, as well as your voice. The reason why I created the platform of Birth Moms Real Talk was to allow birth mothers to share their story. If you listen in, you won't see any mom of the 30 some I think I've done, and Marcie, you've been on it, will say, I didn't want my birth certificate to be released. So they're making up stuff. That's the best way I can say. But together we can create this movement to make some change, because it's like, what is it? The squeaky wheel gets through all. We need to become squeaky wheels. Thank you.
Absolutely. And good to see you this evening again. Thanks for joining us. Good stuff. Marcie 2.
Hi, guys. Yeah. So, so
Marcie.
I've done some advocacy in my state on original birth certificate access. And
Some.
I appreciate, no, but really, I appreciate everything that
You are
you've
a
said.
huge driving force. Don't be too modest. You
Well, Joe Allen's in charge right now, but
no,
what I really wanted to say was a few things. I want to talk fast for me anyway. So I totally echo what Rich said. It is so much about relationship building. You are not going to walk in, well, it's very rare to walk into the Capitol and pass your bill in one session. So I'm sure it's happened, especially with the donor conception bill, and that is, I think more people can relate to that issue. And so it is more compelling. And there are also like what our society has told us already are ethical breach that are getting these bills. And then the other thing that MJ had said earlier about social media and social media platforms like TikTok and so on, those are fantastic and they're really good for building allies. We're getting so more, the younger generation, for a lot of the legislative aides in the Capitol, it's a no-brainer. These things need to pass, right? So but it's the older legislators that may not be on TikTok that are really struggling to kind of get this. I see people write kind of these long diatribes on Facebook about how unfair, that we're blocked from access, blah, blah, blah. Take that and just modify it and turn it into an op-ed and submit it to your stodgy old newspaper in your town, the main one, whatever the main newspaper is, because that's what the legislators are reading. That is what is shaking up and creating the behind the scenes conversations at the Capitol. Did you see the op-ed in the Austin American Statesman this morning? So many of these Facebook posts, rants, and blog posts are just ready to be op-eds. So take the extra time and put those in your local paper and make those op-eds. And then the last thing I just wanted to add is that it is it would be my dream come true. And I've said this to birth parents. I'm an adoptee, but we've had a lot of birth parent allies on our bill, that birth parents in each state form similar organizations and really get behind a similar issue, not even necessarily original birth certificate access for adoptees, although we will always welcome your allyship and your testimony, but y'all need to make your own organizations asking for access to those papers and the other papers that you signed that you've been barred from. And if we can concurrently use our energy, I think it would be huge. A bill of birth parents shouting for access and wanting truth and transparency in adoption, and then a second bill of birth demands from adoptees. Well, wouldn't that be a powerful thing? Because then there it is. Obviously, birth parents do want this information out there, and they're not ashamed to be, to talk about these issues and be named and testify and be public with their stories. But we can say that, adoptees can say that all day long, but it takes birth parents saying that to really get the legislature to believe that and feel comfortable with these bills. Okay, so I'm going to shut up now, but thanks for letting me say those things.
Thank you, Marcie. We appreciate all you do out there as well. Yeah, you stay pretty busy.
Go Texas.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Shelley.
To go off what Marcie said, I think what we're missing a lot of the time, especially I felt in Wisconsin, listening to the testimony, was birth mother testimony. I feel like we had a lot of adoptees and everyone else, but just lacking that birth mother testimony. I just think those legislators hearing the birth mothers saying it's okay just might be really helpful in the situation. So just finding birth mothers that are willing to testify and share their story. And I think, especially in person, I was able to get a few letters from birth mothers I know, but I really just think having their faces present there talking would have, been more beneficial.
That's such a great point, Shelley, and I appreciate all your work in Wisconsin. I know we coordinated efforts on a number of things, and in Colorado, one of the things we did that was proved to be very effective, it took us a while to get our spiel down and our order of testimony down, but once the bill was introduced, once the sponsor got up and gave an explanation of the bill, we always lead off in testimony with our birth mothers, because an adoptee can stand up and say, birth parents weren't promised anonymity, and legislators go, uh-huh. When a birth mother stands up and says, the only thing I was promised was I would never see my baby again. Whole different dynamic, right? The only thing I was promised was that I was unfit to be a mother and I had to give my baby away if I loved him. Whole different dynamic there. And so you deal with the objection right up front when you get a mother saying, you know what, there's really no correlation between abortion, a decision to abort, and a decision to relinquish the baby. They're two different things. One is about whether to carry a pregnancy to term. One is about whether or not to raise your child. Two different decisions. And so that helps kind of bust the adoption, not abortion myth that's out there. And once our Republican sponsors got there, they said, that makes total sense. And when I said, you know what, closed adoption, sealed adoption records is actually an incentive toward abortion. Because if a woman has no hope of knowing what happened to her baby, why go to the trouble of carrying the pregnancy to term? And the light bulbs above our heads in Colorado, once they got that, they're going, absolutely, we are so on board with this because we like truth and transparency. And our moms who helped get the bill passed to get access to their records, Senator Steve Johnson, I mentioned him in a blog that I just published on both the CTTA website and the ASRC website. So if you haven't read it, please read it and share it. But in committee, Senator Steve Johnson actually apologized to the mothers who testified. And it was so powerful. The nature of the blog is, hey, it's time for an American apology to moms. Mothers on here, would you agree it's time for an apology to you? It's obvious to me. Yeah, it's obvious to me that it's overdue and we need to pursue it at the state level and potentially the federal level, but maybe even starting at the state level. And I know Australia has led the way in that. Canada has done it. So it can and should happen here. And these are related issues. Once people get what mothers went through, that blows the myth of anonymity and the big promise. All you were promised is you were unfit and you were never going to see your baby again. And once legislators get that, then that opens the door for these other issues. So if we approach it as kind of a full court press, hey, maybe this isn't the year for a birth certificate bill, but maybe you can get your legislators to do a resolution on the Adoptee Citizenship Act. We're seeing that coming out of more states. Maybe once they meet some of the moms, you can do a bill that's going to guarantee they can get copies of the records they signed. Then once that happens and the education starts and people know you can go, oh, and by the way, there's this adoption records issue. By the way, there's this donor conceived issue over here. And so one of the things that fragments us, I think, is, what's the best way to put it? I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or step on anybody's toes. But sometimes we get in the game of whose voice should be the most elevated here, or who suffers the most from all the wounds that we've had, or who's been dealt the worst injustice. When you're looking at it, and I so appreciate you use the word marketing as opposed to sales, that came up earlier. When you look at it from a marketing perspective, it's a question of what's the message that we need to craft in this state? That's how we can all get under the big tent and say, all right, how are we going to do it in this state? What's the message that these legislators need to hear? And as we craft that and we leverage those talking points and we roll out the specific talking point sheets, all of a sudden we've got people with common issues going for a common goal that are supporting each other rather than competing with each other. There's a place and time in your support group to tell your story and rip your scabs off. And I'm not minimizing any of that. I've been there. And then I'm about to go into a workshop with male adoptees where we're going to do that this weekend. And it's going to be brutal. But does that make sense? Does that help?
Absolutely, it makes sense. It does make sense.
Yeah,
you know?
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be winding down the hour. Do we have any last minute questions or comments before we go into closing announcements? Rich, we really appreciate everything that you do out there. I mean, over 20 years of advocacy and support and legislation. You know, we love you. We appreciate everything that you do.
I love you guys too. And then you learn as you go. You know, nobody's an expert and there's always more to learn, but we've got great resources. I'm happy to help anybody with ideas. And you take the fish and throw away the bones and do what's best for you and your state. That's what makes for success.
Marcie, could I step in?
Yes.
This is Yvonne. This is Yvonne again, Birth Moms Real Talk podcast. I live in Washington, D.C. 3 of my birth mom and their minds, birth moms, we're together. So we're that village, whatever. 3 of the birth moms who have podcasts are on tonight. And we got a lot of good ideas. I don't want to leave tonight without having an action plan. What are some steps we can put together? I know this is being recorded, Marcie, so what I am saying and I wish this can happen is that I don't know whether you send anything out afterwards, but these action steps I'm calling for, and I'm willing to, and have done on my podcast, had several different birth moms who are working initiatives in their states. And we have some states represented from Minnesota, Alaska, Georgia, Ohio. These are people, and my podcast guests have come from all over. And Australia is one. I'm talking to Australia because Australia is number 3 of listeners for the Birth Moms Real Talk podcast. But I would hate to see us walk away from tonight and not have some steps we can put into place.
Love it. One suggestion, if something in this talk has moved you and you want to just offer yourself as a resource or need some help and ideas, you can email me directly at info@asrconline.org, info@ASRC Adoption Search Resource Connection Online.org, all on one word. Check out the websites, sign up and get on the email lists, get on the subscriber lists, because we won't bombard you with stuff, but when there's something big, we'll put it out to you. And that way we have your contact information as well. And I think as a third step, start looking for opportunities like the NAP conference, opportunities like we put on something called the Awake Influencer Forum. It's been about 1.5 years since we did it. We've got more coming, but it's a place where you can get equipped. And on the ASRC online website, check the curriculum on that. And when you see it advertised, join up because it's powerful. We've had great speakers, great responses. 3, my plea to you is do what you can where you can. If you want to contribute money to people who are pushing the Adoptee Citizenship Act, do that. If you have a few pennies to throw in, our immediate urgent need is to kick in some money for the Breakfast Club found on the CTTA website, because we are raising money for that. It's coming up in August. And whatever you got, $5, $10, $25, If you love breakfast and you have $1,000, please donate, because it does make a difference. We attract legislators. We had 14 legislators from the last one who said they wanted to be reached out to after the last one that happened in November. So it is an effective outreach.
Right.
Those are my action points. What do you got?
Anybody else? Ideas, thoughts?
One
If
last
not-
shout out. Paquita Tynes, I need to talk to you. Email me.
I hear you, and I will send you an email.
Yeah, my messenger's down. I'm locked out right now because my two-factor authentication sabotaged me. But
Okay. Well, I will reach out to you through Marcie. But it was
Beautiful.
good hearing you. I sent you a chat. So good hearing you and seeing you. So cool, dude.
oh, bless you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, we're running out of time. I'm gonna let Peter close out with the last question or comment, and then we'll have closing announcements.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Rich, for everything you do, and you're being here today. And even though we have different political systems, it's always an insight into how you respond to those, and your answers, and that I'm taking all that on board. I also wanted to just post in the chat. You mentioned about foster care and aging out, and children, young adults becoming homeless. I'm going to post what we do over here in Australia. We have some supported independent living that the government pays for, that supports them into a unit or a flat or something, and assists them to get a credit rating or a rental history, and we'll give that support up to 25 years old. And I have a young adult in the room next to me who has recently aged out of the foster care system under our care, but still lives under our roof. So yeah, I have a understanding of the needs and whatnot. And I just thought it might be interesting for you to see what we do here. And I've had another child, or not child, child still under 18, gone into an assisted living system where they've been supported. So yeah, it might be some interesting reading for you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that.
So it's in the chat now. Otherwise, if you can feel free to contact me through Facebook, I can drop it into a message for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your leadership there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Okay, Beth, do you have some closing announcements for us? Okay, next week's guest, Greg Gentry from Fireside Adoptees. So we're going to learn all about Greg and his work in the community. So make sure you join us next Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And let's see what else we have. Oh yes. Now we're talking about how some of these groups can join in. We can come together because together we are stronger. So we made this announcement recently that NAP is joining the Right to Know, and we'll be hosting a summit on March 30th through April 1st, 2023 here in Louisville, Kentucky. So this is a way that you can come out and join up. We're going to see what our two organizations can do together. So it's going to be a really exciting time. So we want you to mark your calendars. Rich, you'll be coming out for that as well. So we want to make sure that everybody can come to this. We're real excited about this opportunity. And is that it, Beth? I'm just looking. Okay. Oh, that's right, David. David, we have Adoptee Paths to Recovery upcoming on I don't see a date on that. This is Tuesday.
17th, I believe.
The 17th.
This coming Tuesday.
This coming Tuesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we have Dr. Joyce. And she's back on the 24th. at 6 p.m. So make sure that you go into Eventbrite and get signed up for these as well. Sorry, guys, I'm a little distracted. I've got a new puppy here and it's been causing me some problems. So, but he's so cute. But anyway, thank you all. That's a wrap from us this evening. Rich, thank you so much for all your work and everybody that showed up this evening. We appreciate you. We love you. Everybody have a great weekend and we'll see you back here next Friday night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Have fun this weekend.
Have a good
Will be
week,
good.
everyone.